It opens with a picture of a small child there. Unaware of anything, he was still laughing and playing, saying, "I am a mage, you magical beast. Take this, my magic." The little girl across from him happily replied, "I'm the magical beast. I'm going to eat you up, you pesky mage." Then the boy raised the wooden stick in his hand, took a stance, and slammed it right onto the little girl's forehead. The little girl winced in pain, her face scrunching up in anger as she yelled, "Hey, why'd you hit me for real?" But the boy felt no remorse and even brazenly declared, "Well, a magical beast is supposed to be defeated by a mage." At that, the little girl demanded, "Then I want to be the mage, too." He selfishly objected, "No way." The little girl still wanted to argue, "Why not?" Just then, Robert approached from behind with a gentle smile, greeting them. My, our little ones are full of energy this morning, aren't you?" The two children politely greeted Mr. Robert in return. The naive little boy asked, "How do you become a mage, sir?" The old man answered honestly, "It's not something you can become just by wanting to, my child. Mages are the pinnacle of humanity, reigning over the highest class in our society. We are the nobles and knights who wield the mystical powers passed down from our ancestors. So, unfortunately, you children can't become mages." The boy's father, standing behind him, seemed a bit helpless. "What are you telling the children? Elder, is that true?" Robert looked puzzled and asked, "What's true?" The man explained bluntly, "I heard a magical beast has appeared, sir." Robert's face grew serious as he confirmed, "That's true." This made the man anxious. "What?" Rabers quickly explained. "Last night, Rob said he saw it at the village entrance. Its whole body was covered in pitch-black shadows. He said it was a panther as big as a house. But don't worry, the village chief has already gone to the city to hire a mage. I'm sure he'll succeed and that magical beast will be exterminated." The villagers breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, that's wonderful news." They warned the children in the village, "Did you hear that? You kids are not to go into the forest for the time being, okay?" Rabers picked up a branch and added, "You all should be careful too. If you're not a mage, it's nearly impossible to kill a magical beast." The boy's father asked worriedly, "Does everyone in the village know, sir?" The old man stated casually, "Of course." The man asked further, "Then what about him?" Rabers looked blankly. "Who do you mean?" The man specified, "That fellow on Hizarin Hill." Up on the hill, sheep were resting. He explained to Rabers, "Turan the shepherd, sir." Turan was lying on the ground looking up at the sky, surrounded by his sheep. He thought to himself, "I'm bored to death. It's the same damn scenery day in and day out." He closed his eyes in frustration, sighing, "At this rate, I'll forget how to even talk." Suddenly, Turan heard a scolding voice, "You useless brat!" Rabers approached, leaning on his staff and chiding him. "The sun hasn't even set, and a young man like you is already lazing around, slacking off, huh?" Turan snapped back angrily, "You're blocking my sun! Move!" This enraged the old man. "You insolent punk!" he asked, exasperated. "Are you still holding a grudge about what happened back then?" Turan acted as if he didn't know what he was talking about. "What old story?" "You mean the one where after my mother died, you tried to sneakily make the flock common property?" His blunt accusation made Rabers flush with embarrassment. Clearing his throat, Turan sat up and affirmed, "Yeah, if it's about that, then you're right. I'm a petty person, not nearly generous enough to share my mother's inheritance. We're not close enough to ask about each other's well-being, so if you're here for something, say it quick and get lost." Rabers shouted in anger, "Why, you little—" Turan's eyes darkened as he challenged what a Rabers reined in his emotions and warned, "A magical beast has appeared." Turan asked nonchalantly, "A magical beast?" Rabers gently stroked a sheep's head and informed him, "They say it's a panther as big as a house. Rob discovered it and is telling the villagers now." Turan remarked blandly, "Sounds like a big deal." The old man asked worriedly, "Aren't you scared? Around here you're the most likely target. I don't know what your guts are made of. Anyway, the village chief has already gone to hire a mage. You'd better be careful. I came all this way myself because I was worried about you." Suddenly, Turan cut in, "Adults are so dishonest. Why not just say you're worried about the flock, not me?" The truth hit a nerve, and the old man roared with anger, "You insolent whelp!" Turan smirked and commanded, "Hey, old man. Now that you've said your piece, Scram, your breath stinks so bad it's making my nose go deaf." And with that, Rabers had no choice but to leave seething with anger. Turan's eyes froze. Magical beasts. That's what they call creatures that possess the mystical power of mana. If humans have mages, then beasts have magical beasts. A mage would come all the way to a rural village like this because of a magical beast? So I'm finally going to see a mage in person. But a mage hired by the chief of some backwater village probably isn't the real deal. He grinned and added, "Still, I want to see for myself. I wonder how strong they are," Turan thought to himself. Then suddenly he smelled something. Turan's eyes widened. He recognized the scent. It was the smell of blood. As dusk began to fall, Turan walked slowly, a bit dazed. "I'm sure it was this way." Suddenly he realized something. Turan stopped in his tracks, his gaze fixed on one spot, his expression blank. He had found Rabos's body on the ground. "You told me to be careful, Rabos," he said nonchalantly. "But you went and kicked the bucket first, huh?" A part of him was shocked to think the smell of blood was coming from old man Rabos. Turan began to analyze the wound. This wasn't caused by a normal wild animal. It had to be a magical beast. Then at that very moment, Turan looked up in astonishment. He saw a towering monster beside him striding toward him, yet he just stood there, unfazed. The panther-like monster emerged, staring intently at Turan. Down in the village, a curious boy asked, "Are magical beasts really strong? Dad can't even grown-ups beat them." The adult quickly replied, "Of course they're strong, son. If a normal adult like me went up against one, there wouldn't even be any bones left." The boy asked, filled with dread, "You can't beat them either, Dad. So what's our village going to do now?" The man reassured him in a soft voice. "Don't worry. The village chief has gone to hire a mage. The mage will defeat the magical beast for us." The boy asked worriedly, "The mage won't lose, right? He'll teach that magical beast a lesson, won't he?" The man nodded confidently. "Of course. They are great figures born with magical powers. They can kill a magical beast with a single word." Turan glanced at the monster beside him, his lips barely moving. "Die!" The panther monster was sent flying, but it wasn't dead. It only bared its fangs and growled. A powerful aura radiated from Turan. He casually wondered to himself, that didn't work. As Turan stood there puzzled, the panther monster charged again. He shouted, ordering it to stop. And just like that, the monster retreated into the distance. Turan let out a faint smile. He muttered to himself, "I knew I couldn't kill it right away, but it can't even follow a simple stop command." The panther monster furiously smashed a boulder beside it, grinding its teeth in anger as it stared at Turan. He didn't just stand there this time. He crouched down slightly. Turan let out a sharp breath, making up his mind. If that's how it's going to be. He picked up a stone in his hand. Turan pulled out a shepherd's sling, declaring, "A shepherd has to act like a shepherd." At that moment, the panther monster lunged forward. Turan commanded the stone harden and used the sling to whip it through the air. Turan's eyes reflected the image of that very stone. Then he swung the sling hard, ordering it to accelerate. Turan lifted his foot slightly, building momentum. A glint of killing intent flashed in his eyes as he shouted, "Pierce!" A powerful blast of energy shot forward, aimed directly at the panther monster. The blast struck it head-on. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Turan's energy blast continued its powerful trajectory through the air. The panther monster collapsed to the ground, its mouth wide open, roaring in disbelief. Turan slowly approached, thinking to himself, "The target is from above." The stone was still hovering in the air. The moment he called out, the stone plummeted, crashing right onto the panther monster's head. The heavy stone struck with a massive explosion. Turan stared blankly at the smoke in front of him, watching with utter calm as the panther monster was annihilated. He mused to himself, first time using this on a magical beast. Turan quietly asked himself, should I just toss the corpse into a valley or something? Then he clicked his tongue in annoyance. Looks like I've done another thankless good deed for the people in this village. His eyes reflected this image of the monster. I am, in fact, a mage. I realized this special gift of mine long ago. It started 8 years ago. Back then, Turan could control objects. On the day I turned 10, he sat on the ground making everything around him float. Turan excitedly called out, Mom! Mom, look! The logs are floating in the air! But his mother said nothing, so Turan called out again. Mom! He couldn't stop showing off to her. I can create fire, and you can command the wind, too. The memory of that day is still perfectly clear in my mind, not fading in the slightest. His mother screamed angrily, Stop that right now! That was the first and only time Mom had ever gotten that furious with me. Turan, stunned, uttered, Mom! Then she gently took the levitating piece of wood. In a soft voice, she called, Turan, come here. His mother sat down beside him and suggested, "Sit down and talk with Mommy for a little bit, okay, son?" She asked gently. "You still want to be with me for a long, long time, don't you?" Turan nodded sadly, affirming, "Yes, I do." Hearing that his mother instructed him, "Then you have to promise me this. You must swear that from this day forward, you will never, ever use this power again." She reminded him with anguish, "And you must never, ever reveal this power to anyone." Turan couldn't understand. He looked up and asked, "But why, Mom?" She began to explain patiently, "You still remember the stories about the nobles and the knights, don't you?" He answered innocently, "Yes, I remember." Turan began to recite to his mother, "They call people who possess this power mages, whether they are nobles or knights. However, the true nature of nobles and knights, I say, are two completely different extremes. The nobles are descendants of the divine Freon people gods who descended to save humanity in ancient times. As for the knights, they are actually the descendants of those nobles. But our bloodline has been mixed with that of mortals." After hearing this, she praised him. "That's right, you still remember it very well." Then his mother began to explain, "That is the reason why the world must draw a clear line between nobles and knights even though both are mages. I will explain to you why you are forbidden from ever using this power." His mother, Turan, revealed a shocking secret to him. "It's because you inherited that power from your father, a knight. And behind this village's walls lie countless treacherous nobles. Those nobles look down on knights as if they were nothing more than their slaves." She looked directly into her son's innocent face and warned him, "That's why you must remember what I'm telling you. Etch it into your very soul. Absolutely no one can ever know that you are a mage." His mother, Turan, asked softly, "Can you promise me that—" "To this day, 8 long years have passed since then, and I have always kept the vow I made to my mother. That promise will never be broken. I have no desire to expose myself as a mage, nor do I have any intention of leaving this mountain and joining the outside world." Turan's eyes slowly opened. Suddenly, a furious pounding came from the door along with a shout. "Turan, get your ass out here!" He slowly went and opened the door. A group of men with furious faces stared at him. After hearing them out, Turan yawned wearily. "So what you're trying to say is," he asked nonchalantly, "that I'm the one who murdered Rabus." They immediately grabbed him by the collar. "Exactly, you shameless bastard," the man raged. "You killed old man Rabus and then threw his body out to be eaten by monsters, didn't you?" After hearing their accusation, he just stood there silently. After a moment of silence, Turan spoke. "I see now why you're all trying to pin this on me." Hearing this, they were stunned. "What?" Turan answered bluntly. "The oldest man in the village dies a lonely death instead of some able-bodied men who are just too cowardly to face the monsters yourselves. I can see why. You all saw this as the perfect way out," he said with a smirk. "It's such an easy way to shirk your responsibility and dump it all on me." Turan simply leaned back slightly, easily dodging the blow. Magic really is convenient, he thought to himself. As long as I desire something strongly enough, it instantly becomes reality. The only price is a bit of mana. Turan whispered, "Fall." And just like that, the man in front of him tripped and fell flat on his face. I don't need to conjure a single flame. Just a little push like this is all it takes, to make it look natural, not too obvious. Just enough so they don't die. I'll use pressure to subdue them. As he thought this, Turan executed a series of professional-looking moves. Wooden clubs went flying into the air. And just like that, for 8 long years, I have successfully hidden the fact that I am a mage after taking care of them. Turan casually dusted off his hands. He sighed. You all should have saved that energy for Mr. Rabus's funeral. Then he turned to the women. Are you here to cause trouble too? The girl quickly shook her head. No, we came to see you, Turan. He fell silent for a moment, then said, Get these idiots off my mountain. Turan went back inside and took off his shirt. The town below is going to be in an uproar over this, he thought. They'll probably use it as an excuse to push down my prices. Every time I go down there, to trade, fine by me. I'll just have to teach them another lesson. Until I get a fair price, that is. With that thought, Turan sighed in relief. I already gave them a beating they won't forget. They probably won't dare come back again. Suddenly, he heard another knock at the door. Annoyed, he muttered, Again are these people crazy. The knocking outside continued. Turan stormed to the door and yelled, Who is it? Do you really want another? but he stopped short when he saw the tall man standing before him. Turan asked cautiously, "And who might you be, sir?" The man looked flustered. "My sincerest apologies. I was hoping I might ask for a small favor for my journey, but it seems I've come at a rather bad time, haven't I?" Turan looked up at him thinking. A group of travelers. Then he spoke. "Not at all. Please forgive me. We just had some uninvited guests. They were causing a bit of a ruckus is all. Mother taught me the rules of etiquette." Turan wondered, "But is this polite enough? I've never had a proper conversation with anyone from this town. This backwater town before, so this feels incredibly strange. Still, for a group of armed travelers to show up in a dull town like this." Finally, Turan spoke up. "If you're looking for a place to rest..." He let out a sigh, then said, "Please come in." A table full of food was laid out. Turan said apologetically, "My family isn't exactly well off, and so I'm afraid I don't have any fine cuisine to offer." While eating, the man Kian replied, "Nonsense, this is a magnificent feast. In any case, you've taken me a bit by surprise. Have you really never met any travelers from distant lands before?" Turan calmly confirmed that was correct. "I was born and raised right here on this hill. I've been a shepherd my whole life, and it's rare for this tiny town to have any tourists." While drinking, his eyes suddenly froze. Turan also raised his cup and drained it. Suddenly, Kian exclaimed with interest, "How fascinating." Utterly bewildered, he turned and asked, "Huh?" The man bowed his head and slowly explained, "For someone who grew up here, as a shepherd, you are incredibly well-versed in polite etiquette. Your parents must have raised you very strictly, haven't they?" Turan answered honestly, "I learned those things from my mother, but she passed away a few years ago from a serious illness." Kian exclaimed cheerfully, "She raised a son as praiseworthy as you, so I'm certain that she is now resting peacefully with the gods in their heavenly palace. I want to sincerely thank you one more time." Turan replied calmly, "I'm only living as my mother taught me." Then he asked curiously, "But what brings you to this remote countryside, sir?" Kian smiled and replied, "I've been commissioned to handle a small matter." Turan asked, slightly surprised, "A small matter?" Then the man explained, "They're looking for someone capable of eliminating that Black Panther monster. I am a mage." Hearing this, Turan's face also froze. He spoke softly, "Then you must be the mage our village elder mentioned." The man casually admitted, "That would be me, and now..." May I be so bold as to ask you a question?" Turan answered quickly, "Please go ahead." Kian began to probe. "I can clearly sense the presence of a monster in this area. And yet I don't see a trace of any ferocious creatures around. What's even stranger is that you clearly know about the village elder and that monster, and yet you're strangely calm. You have no intention of running or hiding. If that monster targets humans, its target could very well be you. Aren't you afraid at all?" "You seem formidably brave for a shepherd who's never set foot outside this town, don't you think?" "Who are you really?" An answer was uttered, "A mage." Back in the past, a young Turan naively asked his mother, "Mom, why can't I let people know I'm a mage?" "So, who are you anyway?" An answer came out, "A mage." Back in the past, Turan naively asked his mother, "Why can't I let people know I'm a mage?" "Huh," his mother replied worriedly, "it's because of those wretched nobles out there." He asked again, still curious, "Wretched nobles, Mom?" She explained sadly, "If nobles are just shepherds like us, then their knights are no different than the dogs those nobles keep in their homes. They might treat you with love like a family member, but they're ready to sell you off or turn you into a scapegoat whenever they see fit. I never want my son to live a life like that, Turan. You want to stay with me too, don't you?" "Right," Turan replied innocently. "Yes, ma'am." Then she warned him, "So remember this. No one can know that my son is a mage, especially not other mages. If they sniff you out, they will tear us apart and turn you into one of their hunting dogs. Then they'll discard you whenever they please. And to prevent my identity as a mage from being exposed, I might have to take someone's life with my own hands." Turan's eyes were cold and sharp. He wasn't joking in the slightest when he mentioned that. "So it has all come to this." Kian tried to de-escalate with difficulty. "Why have you gone silent?" He realized Turan was being completely serious. Kian could only manage an awkward laugh. "That serious look on your face, and is ruining my joke." Only then did Turan's expression soften. He let out a sigh. "Was that a joke just now?" He spoke up to remind him, "Forgive me. I'm not very good with humor." Kian also stood and approached him. "No, the fault is mine. I should be the one to apologize for making you uncomfortable." Turan explained with a smile, "It's just that this is the first time I've ever heard a joke about mages, so I was a bit taken aback. Keon also acted courteously. Your reaction was so interesting that I may have teased you a bit too much. He held out his hand. I just remembered we haven't had a proper introduction. It's a pleasure to meet you. Keon smiled and introduced himself. My name is Keon, a lone traveler. Turan accepted the handshake. How rude of me. I should have been the one to introduce myself first. He smiled. My name is Turan, an ordinary shepherd. The two of them sat down at the table to eat and began to chat warmly. Turan mentioned, I just turned 18 this year. Keon replied, and I have reached the age of 75. Hearing this, Turan was surprised. You look much more robust and younger than your actual age. Keon explained without hesitation, mages tend to have a slower aging process. Slow, and they have a longer lifespans than normal people. Turan asked curiously, what made someone like you choose the life of a wanderer? The question made Keon nostalgic. I decided to leave after 65 years of service to the Arabian family, he recounted in these twilight years of mine. A man just wants to be free to roam unbound by anything. Turan thought to himself, that sounds like such a free-spirited and romantic ideal. Their conversation went on and on. It made Turan feel warm, enjoying such a pleasant discussion. Keon also laughed cheerfully the whole time. The atmosphere inside the house brought Turan a sense of gentleness and peace being with such a virtuous person. I never thought it would feel this enjoyable. They talked until the sun peeked over the mountains outside the window. Keon suddenly realized, is it this late already? Turan smiled. You're not wrong. I was so absorbed in our conversation that I didn't even notice the sun was coming up. Keon pushed back his chair and stood up. It's time for me to continue my journey. He pushed a coin onto the table. Take this Arabian silver coin. This is the purest kind of silver. It's certainly more than enough to pay for my meal. He pushed a coin onto the table. Take this Arabian silver coin. This is the purest kind of silver. It's certainly more than enough to pay for my meal. Before leaving, he looked back wistfully. Who knows, maybe we'll come back here a few more times to bother you for a meal, eh? The sky gradually brightened over the hills behind the town. The sheep grazed contentedly on the vast pasture. Turan called out loudly, All right, gather round. Hearing the sound, the sheep lifted their heads. They slowly started walking towards him. Turan rarely felt as relieved as he did today. This is the first time I've ever met another mage. But more importantly, how long has it been since I've had such a comfortable conversation? He happily petted a sheep's head. His calm demeanor and sense of humor seemed to flow naturally from his words. He was warmer than any adult I'd ever met. That very evening at sunset, Keon appeared at Turan's door again with a hunted wolf slung over his shoulder. I have returned. Turan marveled. He really is a respectable person. He completely changed his previous way of thinking. I used to think knights were just soulless machines, always controlled like tools by arrogant nobles. Now how am I supposed to report this to the village chief? On a forest trail Keon was walking. He thought that the land of Hizarin was now clear of monsters. He quietly observed his surroundings. The broken trees around him reminded Keon of something. Traces of a struggle were still there, but there was no longer any sign of the monster. He stopped in front of a large tree, its trunk cracked from a rock embedded in it. Could the monster have been killed already? Keon stared at it, pondering. Who would have been capable of hunting it down? Or maybe the village chief secretly hired another mage besides me. He let out a small sigh. But either way, what a relief. As long as the monster is gone and everyone is safe, that's all that matters. A gut feeling made Keon's eyes snap open suddenly on high alert. He quickly whipped his head around. The giant paws of a panther monster slowly approached. Along with a dark, foul stench, its head was completely warped into a hideous, grotesque shape. Yet the powerful aura this panther monster exuded was incredibly dangerous. Keon was stunned for a moment. Wait, is this a monster spirit? He stepped back in fear. Who could have acted so irresponsibly? The panther monster quickly raised its paw to attack Keon. Its claws shook the very ground, but Keon managed to jump away and dodge it. He regained his composure and analyzed the situation. If a monster's corpse isn't properly absorbed or its mana purified after death, it will mutate into a vengeful spirit like this. A mage who specializes in hunting monsters would never make such a basic mistake. The panther monster was still frantically attacking Keon. He found it incredibly confusing. Clearly, whoever finished this monster off must have been a mage. But why did they just let it become a spirit? Kion wondered. Did they really not know the consequences of leaving that source of mana behind? Even the greenest rookie would have to know something this fundamental. Otherwise, they couldn't have faced it in the first place. A golden orb of mana formed in Kion's hand. Or could they have some other motive? Whatever the case, I have to destroy it now. The mana transformed into a long beam of powerful light. Kion directed it to attack the panther monster, but the attack didn't seem to inflict any damage on it whatsoever. Kion was astonished by the panther monster's power. My magic has no effect at all. That means this monster's mana is far beyond what I can handle. He suddenly panicked when all he saw before him was a puddle of black liquid. Where did it go? Kion struggled to guess. Is it trying to use magic to counter magic? Where is it? From the shadow behind him, a churning stream of liquid appeared. The panther monster had appeared behind Kion, roaring furiously. It slashed at him before he had time to dodge. His arm is gravely wounded, bleeding profusely. This is no opponent an ordinary knight can fight against. At the very least, it would take someone on the level of a low-ranking noble to have any hope of victory. Kion was sent flying backward. He seems to be running out of steam, his breathing heavy. To think this would happen in a remote mountain village like this. To think another high-level spirit would appear. You truly never know what life will throw at you. To think that in a remote mountain village like this, another high-level spirit would appear. You really never know what life will throw at you. His head was bowed, his dark eyes filled with despair. Kion gritted his teeth. But I will not go down so easily, even if it costs me my life. I will drag you to the grave with me. He gathered a massive amount of magical power in his hand. I'll pour all my remaining mana into my palm. I just need to land a direct hit the moment it lunges. At the same time, the panther monster charged forward. With a look of sheer determination, he leaped towards it. The panther monster raised its claws, and just then, a massive blast of magical energy flew in from another direction. It sent the panther monster, which was about to attack Kion, flying. Debris rained down as Kion stood stunned. The panther monster had been taken down, lying motionless on the ground. With just a single blow, the attacker spoke up. Are you all right, sir? Kion let out a slight laugh in reply. That's quite a startling joke for a shepherd to make. He turned to see Turan calmly approaching. Turan! Kion was astonished. So you're a mage. Turan acknowledged it. Yes, that's right. Kion couldn't help but ask, why did you hide it from me before? The long silence made him feel helpless. Never mind. Let me ask you this instead. Why did you save me just now? You could have easily left without getting involved. Turan's lips parted. Because... In the dead of night at Turan's house, a wolf lay motionless on the ground. He tilted his head curiously. Why go to all this trouble? Kion, not understanding, asked again, What do you mean? Turan explained, I don't know what the village chief promised you, sir, but I believe that with your abilities you could earn much more money, with far less effort. Kion laughed heartily. They are truly pitiful people. Turan lowered his head in silence. What's so pitiful about them? Kion leaned back, relaxed. They live out here on the frontier, constantly trembling in fear without even the most basic protection. Turan interrupted. But that's not your responsibility or your fault, is it? Kion thought differently. He expressed his view. The calling of a mage is to be an inheritor of divine power. That's why we should live with the pride of protecting the common folk. He closed his eyes and sighed. Perhaps not every mage shares my ideals. Everyone has their own thoughts and their own path to walk. The thought made Turan smile faintly. He replied calmly. Doesn't everyone have the right to choose how they live? The panther monster, having recovered its strength, suddenly attacked them both. Kion quickly regained his composure and warned, Listen to me. This isn't something we can fight head-on. He said firmly, It's the kind of monster you can't defeat unless you're a noble. Go inform the village chief and help everyone evacuate immediately. The panther monster transformed its blue eyes, horrifying its body twitching. Kion stood up to face it. I'll stay here and hold it off. He looked worriedly at the creature. He thought to himself, even though I'm talking tough, I have no idea how long I can last. Turan suddenly cut in. It won't be a problem. He controlled a rock by the roadside. I believe that if my last attack had hit its mark, everything would have been fine. Kion was dumbfounded. What are you mumbling about? Turan's calmness made him quietly realize, could he mean that his last attack still wasn't his full power? A young knight living in seclusion in the mountains who has the ability to hunt a spirit that requires the power of nobility. And in reality, the veteran knight Kion mused, what he was witnessing right now was not merely a chance encounter in the countryside. Countless small rocks around them began to float in the air under Turan's power, nor was it the act of a reckless young knight trying to escape his noble class. They all exploded at once around Turan, causing the magical energy around him to swell considerably. This scene unfolding right before his very eyes, he smiled. Could very well be the beginning of a mage who will turn this world upside down. Turan replied to Kion, I'm also very curious about my own true limits. Hearing this, Kion became angry. I absolutely will not allow you to act like that. No matter how superior your talent is, that entity is still an extremely fearsome opponent, he demanded, as the panther monster raised its claws. We need to coordinate. But before it could even attack, Turan struck first, sending it flying. Kion finally realized the disparity in their power. No. At this moment, if I jump in, I'll just be a hindrance. I couldn't even react to that last blow. He dispelled the magical energy in his hand right then and there. Model, there's nothing I can do to help right now. Kion immediately stepped aside to observe. Turan's powerful magic was exploding forth a perfect chance for his talent to truly shine. Even though Turan appeared calm on the outside, he seemed to be having trouble. Damn it. He jumped back to dodge the monster's attack. The panther was still intact. It had no effect at all. Kion shouted a warning, You can't finish a specter with ordinary physical attacks. Turan backed away from the panther monster's line of attack. He asked, Then how do I destroy it? Along with Kion's reminder, Use fire. Turan raised his hand, his eyes glowing. Kion hesitated. Or lightning. That works too. A blazing red flame flew out, scorching the panther monster's hide. Turan frowned in confusion. It still didn't work. Kion shouted, Not like that, he thought to himself silently. To impose a mage's power on another living creature, establishing a rule of cause and effect is the most fundamental prerequisite. Don't tell me he's completely clueless about even the most basic knowledge of a mage. Kion suddenly understood. Could it be? He watched Turan's back as he nimbly dodged the panther monster's pursuit. Was he the one who killed the beast and left it to become a specter? Could that mean that in his entire life, Turan has never once absorbed mana? Kion had to raise his voice to teach him, Don't just start a fire. Create it, then unleash it on him. He couldn't help but be surprised by this flow of power, and he's already reached this level of strength. Turan stopped running. He channeled his magic, and a blazing red flame appeared in his hand. Kion watched from the side. If you're a mage creating a flame, isn't that difficult? But controlling it requires specialized training. Turan raised the flame, and it grew into a giant inferno. This made Kion exclaim in disbelief. He was able to do it instantly. Turan quickly ran forward and threw the blazing red orb at the panther monster. The great flame quickly engulfed it. Its body burning fiercely, the panther monster rolled on the ground in agony. Kion yelled, Stay focused! You need to continuously channel your mana so the fire doesn't die out. With his thorough guidance, Turan was gradually finishing the job. You have to burn away every last trace of that specter's existence. The flickering firelight illuminated his focused eyes. Soon the panther monster was no longer struggling. Kion breathed a sigh of relief. We've won. He still couldn't get over his astonishment. It was truly an absurdly strong specter. A specter that would require at least the power of a noble-class mage to fight against. Kion's pupils constricted, and yet he was able to defeat it. Turan turned and asked Kion, Is it really over? The contrast stunned him, body and soul. A shepherd living high in the mountains could perform such a miracle. Kion walked closer. If you don't want to face another specter, you should absorb its mana first. How do I do that? Turan asked, confused. Kion instructed, Imagine you are drawing something deep inside your body. Turan raised his hand. All right. His eyes were closed tight. A large stream of mana flowed out from the panther monster's body. It gathered under Turan's hand, then entered him. His eyes also lit up with the panther monster's power. At that moment, Turan could feel it in all of his veins, the searing mana flowing through his body. The novelty of it shocked him. Kion smiled and explained, You'll feel a certain special kind of pleasure from it. Even seeing it with my own eyes, I still find it hard to believe, he asked again. Is this really the first time you've ever absorbed mana? Turan clenched his fist. Yes. Kion watched his back, thinking. After the first awakening, one's mana pool grows over the years. The best way to increase power is to kill all monsters or other mages and take their mana. He calculated, but this was Turan's first time absorbing mana, and yet he possesses such control over magic to such a masterful degree. This proves his innate potential is on a completely different level. Kian finally realized it. This means this young man is... He spoke up, Turan. He looked up. What is it? Kian bowed formally. I have been incredibly rude to you. May I be so bold as to ask which noble house you belong to? Turan hesitated. Kian replied with deep reverence, yes. Turan glanced at the bloody arm and reminded him, you should clean the blood off yourself first. After they returned, Kian had also bandaged the wound. He repeated himself once more. Please forgive my disrespect, forcing a person of your noble stature to involve himself in such matters. I can only offer my sincerest apologies. Turan answered angrily. I've told you many times I'm not anyone noble, I'm just a shepherd. I don't even know who my father is. He frowned. So please stop acting like that. Kian had no choice but to concede. Very well. All right, don't look at me like that. He wondered, but why would a mage as powerful as you choose to be a shepherd? I don't mean to look down on you, but that line of work seems completely worthy of you at all. Turan recalled that it was his mother's wish. She had instructed him to live this way, until the day she passed away. Kian mused quietly. Your mother's wish, you say? Turan repeated his mother's warning. Down at the foot of that mountain, there's nothing but cunning nobles. If they discover you're a mage, they'll just use you and then discard you, without a second thought. Kian showed his sympathy. She was a wise woman. Turan was also surprised. I'm a little surprised. I thought you'd say that was just parents being overprotective. Kian replied, your mother wasn't entirely wrong. He bowed his head, his face sorrowful. Mages wield great power, and great power always comes with conflict. It was just over 25 years ago. A brutal great war broke out between the great families. Kian's memory was filled with sorrow. It was the battle between the Arabian family, which I once served with all my heart, and the great Gaha family. Countless lives were lost in that war, he recounted. Of the roughly 3,000 Arabian knights at that time, that more than 900 were killed. Nearly one-third of them fell. Turan was very interested in Kian's story. Bitterly, all those I held dear were among that fateful one-third. Turan was very interested in Kian's story. Bitterly, all those I held dear were among that fateful one-third. He recalled with sorrow, my brother-in-arms Denvo, who always dreamed of opening a laundry shop after the smoke cleared. My mentor Herman, who strictly taught me because I still had so many shortcomings to learn from. And my beloved wife and son, too. All of them were killed by the Gaha family. I was the only survivor. Kian fell silent. That is why, in a way, your mother was right. A knight's life can be snuffed out more meaninglessly and fragilely than a commoner's, he reminded him. However, there was one thing she misjudged, and that is your natural talent. Turan was curious. My natural talent. Kian scratched his head. It's shameful to admit this in my current pathetic state, but I was once a rather outstanding knight, and yet you were able to easily destroy that bizarre undead entity, something that even I couldn't subdue. He assessed, your potential isn't limited to the level of an ordinary knight. At the very least, you've already reached the noble class. Kian glanced at Turan, and among them, you definitely belong to the upper echelon in terms of talent. Turan also spoke up. My mother once said my father was a knight. Was that a lie? Kian looked intrigued. In some rare cases, a child with less talent than a knight can still be born into a noble family. Or conversely, a child with the innate talent of a noble can be born into a knight's family. Looking at it that way, I think it's best for you to leave this hill and venture out to explore the vast world outside. Turan was surprised. Why is that? Kian answered with goodwill. Because we humanity are desperately in need of more talented nobles and knights. Mankind has not yet fully conquered this world. He recounted tales from primordial times with a somber tone. The other races rejected by the gods are always watching for an opportunity to rise again. Kian's voice held a hint of anger. And amidst all this, the nobles are too busy fighting amongst themselves. The door creaked open. That is why this era is crying out for strong nobles, with kind hearts like yours. Before leaving, Kian asked, besides, you're not satisfied with this boring life as a shepherd yourself, are you? The question made Turan fall silent for a moment. His silhouette seemed lonely. What can I possibly achieve down there at the foot of the mountain? Kion didn't have a perfect answer for that question. That depends entirely on what you want. He smiled kindly. Money, fame, status, family, or true friendships. Whatever it is, it's extremely difficult to find in a place like this. Isn't it? Kion turned his head, not forgetting to add, just imagine. You could be a hero of justice like me, slaying monsters that threaten the people. He left with one last suggestion. Or become an explorer setting foot in lands no one has ever known. Or even be adopted by a family and walk the path of power and succession. Turan followed Kion to the door, listening to his analysis. I think you have a point. He stood facing Kion. It would certainly be much more interesting than herding sheep here all year round. Turan gave a wry smile. For the first time in my life, I'm actually curious about the world out there. Kion's encouragement seemed to have worked. Even so, I worry that I'm planting baseless expectations in him. I will support whatever path you choose. He suddenly remembered. Oh, right. What exactly is your bloodline ability? I should have asked this from the start. But Turan's face was blank. Bloodline ability. Kion bowed his head. My apologies. I keep forgetting that you don't know much about magic. He explained, bloodline abilities are special traits that nobles inherit from their ancestors. For us Freens, whether or not you possess a bloodline ability is the very line that separates nobles from knights. Kion raised his hand, creating a magical flame as an example. Is there any incantation that feels particularly easy and natural for you when you perform magic, or perhaps some kind of innate talent? That doesn't rely on magic at all. Turan clenched his fist, guessing, You don't mean the fact that I'm really strong, do you? Kion replied that having magical power is enough to enhance a mage's physical abilities. Turan recalled his own physical traits, a very keen sense of smell and a knack for throwing stones. Kion then ventured to guess if your sense of smell is exceptionally sharp. That could also be considered a bloodline ability. He stroked his chin thoughtfully. And being a crack shot with ranged weapons is one of the hallmarks of the Arabian clan. However, that's also a fairly common trait, Kion asked with interest. Go on, tell me more. Turan nodded. All right. After some more conversation, Kion came to a conclusion. I see. What's wrong, sir? Turan asked worriedly, unable to contain his curiosity at Kion's grave expression. Why does he suddenly look like that? Kion spoke up. I think I've figured it out. Which clan do your abilities bear the clearest resemblance to? Turan tilted his head. And which clan is that Sir Kion, who had been looking down the whole time, said a famous and powerful clan? He recalled the savagery of that clan and his own past pain. Known by titles like the Hidden Pursuers or Master Hunters, they were people who had suffered great loss from the war. The Zaha clan. The very ones who once faced the Arabian clan head-on. Turan was stunned, unable to believe what he was hearing. The Zaha clan. A cold sweat broke out and ran down his face. His eyes were wide with shock as he silently repeated the words, the great Zaha clan. At that thought, Turan gulped and stole a glance at Kion, who was silent beside him. Is he saying I share the same bloodline as his enemy? He pressed his lips together tightly, his thoughts in turmoil. What should I say to him? Should I apologize? But this was the doing of relatives I've never even met. They're practically strangers to me. Suddenly Kion spoke up, calling his name Turan. Hearing him, he quickly replied, Sir. Before Turan could say anything else, he gently patted his shoulder, comforting him. Don't look so worried. You yourself had no part in that war. Even so, Turan was still very uneasy, but Kion offered a slightly relieved smile and advised, That's a matter for the adults. If we keep paying blood with blood, the cycle of hatred will never end. Hearing this, Turan suddenly asked, Do you have any regrets? Kion's gaze wavered for a moment before he asked, About what? A gentle breeze blew by, carrying Turan's slightly heavy words. About telling me to go down the mountain. Kion lowered his eyes slightly, then explained in a low voice, If you go down the mountain and pursue power sooner or later, you will end up joining the Zaha clan. After all, you are very talented, but I believe in your character. Kion's words took Turan by surprise. What? He looked up, meeting his trusting gaze. I'm talking about the goodness in you, because you saved me. You even revealed the identity you spent your whole life painstakingly hiding. On the other hand, if someone like you were to join the Zaha clan and achieve a high position, Perhaps you could prevent another devastating war like that from happening again. Turan fell deeper into thought, not saying a word. Seeing this, Kion started to walk past him. Before leaving, he offered some sincere advice. Well, in any case, there's no need to think so hard about it. After all, you haven't decided whether you'll join the Zaha clan or not yet. Seeing this, Kion started to walk past him. Before leaving, he offered some sincere advice. Well, in any case, there's no need to think so hard about it. After all, you haven't decided whether you'll join the Zaha clan or not yet. He smiled faintly and turned his head to look at Kion. I want to try going down the mountain. Hearing that, he laughed, satisfied. It's good that you're thinking that way. But then Turan added, but not right now. He stood facing Kion and calmly spoke. I'll go down the mountain after your wounds have fully healed. His words moved Kion greatly. How kind of you. I only have a few scratches. You really are a good person. A while later, inside the warm wooden house, Kion explained with a serious face and a deep voice. To use magic, you must have mana. That's why mana is often called the Master Key. Turan, sitting opposite him, repeated curiously, The Master Key. Kion's stern voice rang out again. It's not quite the all-powerful force its name suggests, but to use magic, you need a corresponding amount of mana. Turan asked, confused, What's the standard for having mana that corresponds with a spell? He calmly continued, I'm about to explain that now. With that, he held up 3 fingers. The difficulty of a spell is largely determined by 3 factors: first, bloodline, second, compatibility, and third, the law of causality. Next, Kion explained each point to Turan. First, bloodline. This is determined by the blood you're born with and applies to most nobles, not knights. For example, it's very difficult for you to heal my wounds with magic, right? Hearing this, he replied, That's right. An image of a land appeared in Kion's mind as he continued his explanation. But for the Ravista bloodline from the south, that's something they can do even without any training. That is the power that comes from your bloodline. Turan glanced down at his palm, then asked, And what about the second factor, compatibility? Kion continued, You can also think of it as an affinity. It's the concept that a mage can perform manipulations more easily with things they love or are already familiar with. Hearing that, Turan understood. Like how I create a fireball as if I were just throwing a stone. Pleased, he stood up. Exactly. If you were to simply create a flame, you probably wouldn't achieve that kind of speed or destructive power. And the final element is the most important. The law of causality. Even I don't fully comprehend it yet. At this, Kion suddenly posed a question. What would happen if you intentionally used mana to kill me directly? Turan was confused but answered honestly. Probably. A few sparks would flash from my head and that would be it. Exactly. As he spoke, he reached out his hand and cast a spell on the cup on the table. That is precisely what happens when the law of causality is absent, causing the spell to fail. As currents of energy swirled around it, bubbles began to form inside the once empty cup as if it were boiling furiously. When there's no suitable cause for a desired outcome, and when the desired goal is excessively difficult, that's when this law comes into play. After listening and observing, Turan seemed to grasp the concept. I think I'm starting to understand the law of causality now. With that, he calmly sent a small flame toward the furiously boiling cup. If I wanted to kill you instead of just expending mana to wish for your death, I would need to create a cause for that death, like creating and shooting a flame at you. Is that right? Because creating a flame and then launching it is a more natural phenomenon than directly willing someone to burst into flames. Hearing this, Kion's eyes lit up as if he'd just discovered a treasure. Precisely, you could have been a scholar instead of a mage, you know. Turan withdrew his magic, rubbing his chin and murmuring, But I can control ordinary animals at will. So why do magical beasts require such conditions? Kion casually shrugged and explained, That's because of their mana pools. After that, the two continued their discussion for a long time. Inside the wooden house, much later, Turan, breaking a sweat, sighed, Magic really isn't easy at all, is it? Instantly, Kion's stern voice replied, An outstanding mage doesn't just know how to use mana, they must also understand the principles and circumstances behind it. Turan looked up at him and asked, Now that I think about it, does the Jaha bloodline also have some kind of special magic? Kion paused to think, then answered frankly, They were exceptionally skilled at concealment and tracking. Then he suggested, Let's give it a try. Hearing this, Turan quickly got up from his chair. All right. Then he squeezed his eyes shut and silently chanted in his mind, I don't want to be seen. I wish for no sound or scent to be detected. Instantly, part of his body began to dissolve into a white mist. Unaware of Keon's astonished expression, Turan asked hesitantly, Is it working? Before his very eyes. Turan's form was gone, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air. A few seconds later, Keon finally came to his senses and answered, You did it. You did. I can't see you anymore. At that moment, he couldn't help but gulp, because now the space before him was completely empty. Not even a shimmer remained, but only for an instant. Turan gradually reappeared in his original spot. Keon stared at him, his voice unable to hide his astonishment. It's been a very long time since I've witnessed that, but it truly is a frightening ability. During the war, the knights of the Arabian clan feared that power more than anything. Hearing this, Turan mused, It seems like an unreasonably powerful ability. Almost unfairly so, isn't it? However, Keon didn't entirely agree. But remember, it is not invincible. He didn't dwell on the topic, instead turning to leave. Now then, I shall teach you a few methods for magic training. Keon's actions made Turan even more puzzled. Aren't you teaching me too much for a mage from an enemy clan? But he simply replied gently, You saved my life. You even healed me. And besides, haven't I told you before? Keon lowered his gaze, placing a hand on his chest, his voice filled with conviction. I believe in your character. Sometime later, the village chief, having heard the news, stormed over, his face twisted in anger as he shouted, What, you're planning to sell your 7 sheep and just leave? He glared at Turan, who was packed and ready for the road, and furiously berated him. Then who's going to herd the sheep from now on, huh? How could you decide something like that on your own, without even bothering to discuss it with us? Disgusted upon hearing this, he closed his eyes and retorted, Go find yourselves a new shepherd. What I do with my property is none of your business. His repeated threats made the villagers shrink back in fear. In any case, I hope that you will buy this flock back for a fair price, otherwise, I'll release them all and leave on my own. You can go ahead and try to round them up again, but I guarantee it'll be a lot of trouble. Hearing this, a worried villager quietly called out to the village chief, who was now gritting his teeth and biting his lip. He silently thought, This bastard is a man of his word. There's nothing to be gained from provoking him. In the end, the chief had no choice but to compromise, handing Turan a bag of money. All right, I get it. Stay or go do whatever you want. After that, he and Keon left the village. Turan, as if suddenly remembering something, furrowed his brow and spoke up. Now that I think about it, the people in the village, they still owe you compensation for everything that happened. Should I go back and demand it? Keon just smiled, gently unconcerned, and replied, I never intended to accept it anyway. Besides, you're the one who caught the magical beast, aren't you? Hearing that, Turan didn't press the matter. All right, then. Well then, now. Turan paused, looking at the 2 diverging paths before them, then continued, It seems this is where we part ways. Before leaving, Keon glanced at him regretfully. I'm sorry for turning down your offer to travel together. I feel more comfortable as a lone traveler. Turan also gave a relaxed smile. Don't worry about it. Thank you, sir, for everything. He closed his eyes and softly bid farewell. Take care, Turan. Turan smiled brightly and promised, Yes, I hope we can meet again with smiles on our faces. And so the boy stood there watching Keon's figure fade into the distance. For a very long time, it wasn't until much later that he realized why he'd been so uncomfortable with the old man speaking to him so formally. Although he had never lacked his mother's love deep down, the boy had always yearned for the figure of a father, someone who could be an ideal role model for the capable man he would one day become. Time passed. Someone's messy footprints stretched across the sand. All around was a desolate, empty desert. The only sound was the wind whistling through giant rock formations. In the distance, a hooded figure was slowly approaching. That person was none other than Turan. Suddenly, his eyes widened as if he had just spotted something. Not far from Turan, a group of people was slowly walking toward him. Is that a merchant caravan traveling from village to village? Turan couldn't help but rejoice inwardly. This is great. Quickly, he walked up and stood in front of them. I'll just go ask them for directions. Seeing this, the leader spoke up, questioning him. Who the hell are you to block our path? Turan immediately explained honestly, I'm just traveling alone. Could I ask for directions to the nearest city? Hearing this, the men answered, If you follow the road we just came from, you'll find a city called Murray. Their attitude left him a bit confused. Even so, he calmly replied, I understand. As he spoke, Turan slowly walked past them. Thank you all very much for the directions. But suddenly someone stepped forward to block his way. Hold on! He smirked viciously and asked, You get your information and then just leave like that. Turan was stunned. What? However, he quickly regained his composure, a killing intent slowly glinting in his eyes. So what? The man, oblivious, continued to demand, When you receive help, you should know how to show some gratitude. Before he could finish, the surrounding men all drew their knives and surrounded Turan. First, drop that bulging pouch of yours. He glanced around and immediately understood the situation. Highwaymen. The man who had stopped him spoke arrogantly. So, what if we are... The leader, resting a longsword on his shoulder, sneered contemptuously. Just call it your own foolishness. This is abandoned land. Even if someone were to die here, it wouldn't be strange at all, right? Then he pointed the tip of his sword at Turan's throat, his voice threatening, Drop your pouch and your cloak, while we're still being nice to you. Killing you and stripping you down will get blood everywhere and take a lot more effort. But contrary to the man's expectations, Turan just spoke calmly. I see. So you're highwaymen who wouldn't even hesitate to kill. At that moment, he quickly recalled Keon's previous lesson, especially when he had understood the third element, the law of cause and effect and everything that followed. As Keon's power flowed into him, Turan's lips curled into a slight smile. His eyes saw the bandits as nothing more than moving punching bags. I guess I'll have to use you all for some practice. His gaze suddenly froze, a little confused by the laughter from the leader of the group. He seemed to be looking down on him as if this lunatic was talking like he was some kind of mage. One of the henchmen excitedly chimed in, That's right, boss! With a flick of his slender, pale fingers, Turan released a gust of air. He swung his arm back wide, creating a violent gale that sent them all into disarray. His hood came off, revealing his sharp gaze. So instead of just creating wind from the air, shaping it with my hands and amplifying it consumes less mana, much less. Turan was still seriously contemplating. I had no idea I could create such a powerful gust of wind with so little mana. Meanwhile, as the others started to get back up, what the hell is going on? He calmly opened the cap of a water flask. The drops of water suddenly transformed into sharp points under his control, all of them aimed in one direction. One of the bandits turned pale with fear as the darts pierced right into him, knocking him backwards. Turan opened his palm, preparing for the next attack. This magic is supposed to be more useful when there's a lot of water around. Honestly, just throwing in those rocks with my hands feels faster and stronger. The terrified bandit leader hastily begged, We didn't know you were such a powerful mage. Please find it in your heart to be merciful, and forgive us this one time. While he spoke to draw his attention, the remaining men crept up from behind. We'll hand over anything you want. So please, I beg you, be generous and spare our lives. Turan decisively lifted one leg to a moderate height. As he stomped down hard, a slash of earth erupted from behind, striking all the bandits as their leader watched. His face turned pale. No way. With a terrifying expression, Turan looked down in silence. Have they all lost their lives? His voice then came out slowly. Let me ask you something. The man cowered where he sat, answering politely. Yes, great mage, I'll answer anything you want to ask. Turan stared at him and asked bluntly, Why did you dare attack me without even having a plan? Even if I was just a lone traveler, I could have still been a mage just like I am now. The bandit leader's voice faltered. Because you bowed your head. Before he could finish, Turan's eyes widened. What? The man was still looking down, sweating profusely. Even when we used crude language, you still bowed your head and greeted us politely. So we assumed you were just some weak, ordinary person. Turan's face was cold and expressionless. Thanks a lot. That taught me an extremely useful lesson. Hearing this, the bandit leader looked up with a glimmer of hope. So, you'll keep your word and really let me go. But what he didn't expect was the drop of water transforming right above his head. The scene changes to a moment when Keon was calmly talking. Turan, from now on you're going to meet a lot of different people out there, and there is one thing I absolutely must warn you about. Turan held his packed backpack and listened intently as Keon continued. Never show any mercy to scum like those highway robbers. They are people who would never hesitate to harm others for their own monetary gain. A sharp sword rested quietly on the table. The reason I have to say this, and warn you so sternly, is because in that very moment, he had replied very seriously, I think I understand the reason. Turan now stood before the lifeless body of the bandit leader. Because a life that you spare out of weak-hearted pity could very well come back, and directly harm 10 other good people around you. His face was impassive as he stood there muttering, "I've lingered here long enough." Turan carefully walked on the sand following the wheel tracks along the path where the merchants had dragged their carriage. The heavy wheel tracks cut clearly across the sandy terrain. All alone he walked following the tracks, a thought seemingly etched deep into his mind. Turan's lips were pressed into a thin line. He kept moving forward without looking back. "I've killed someone." The bandit leader's terrified face suddenly flashed in his mind. He felt guilty, but he truly couldn't just let them go so easily because of that warning. The lesson Kian taught him surfaced clearly in his mind once more. He also remembered the moment the bandits had tried to ambush him from behind people who had absolutely no hesitation, in their cruel decision to rob and kill for their own gain. They would surely target other people whenever they pleased. Suddenly, his boots stopped at the edge of the trail. The wheel tracks in the desert were gradually fading away. As blades of grass began to cover them up, Turan's chaotic heart finally started to calm down. He recalled Kian's teachings again as he stood there. He looked up at the clear blue sky, and then he continued his steps into a completely new world. His eyes darted around, constantly observing until he stopped in awe. He had found a place that looked truly magnificent and bustling. So this was the small town of Murray. A mother held her daughter's hand as they passed. With a backpack on, Turan slowly walked into the town. His curiosity piqued. This was the first time in his life he'd ever seen so many people gathering together. It was so crowded. A towering and sturdy building appeared before him. Even the architectural style was completely and distinctly different from his small village. Turan continued to walk slowly through the town, observing everything but not saying a word. Now this finally feels like a real city. He now stood before a fruit stall. "Excuse me, can I ask you something?" The vendor responded with a wide smile. "Oh, hello there." The vendor immediately asked what he wanted. "What can I get for you, kid?" Turan politely raised a hand. Actually, I'm not here to buy anything." In his head, he once again recalled Kian's teachings. Once you arrive in a city, and you need a place to rest, just find a nearby inn. Because whether it's a village or a city, there will almost always be an inn available for you. In the present, the vendor's face soured. He waved his hand dismissively. "If you're not buying fruit, then get lost." Turan fell silent, unable to understand the vendor's attitude. Why was he suddenly being so rude? Could it be some kind of unwritten rule in cities like this? You have to buy fruit first before you're allowed to ask questions. Thinking this, Turan pointed to a red-colored fruit. "How much is this?" The vendor answered curtly, 2 dupit. Turan calmly counted a few coins in his palm. 2 dupit. The vendor was still looking at him rudely. "You're clearly an outsider, so I guess you don't know what that is, huh? You can pay with a different currency, I suppose." Turan reached out to place a coin in the vendor's hand. "Where can I find an inn?" The vendor easily gave him detailed directions. "Go straight down the road behind that cloak shop, then turn left. You'll definitely see a building. Oh, with a blue roof. A wooden sign will be hanging outside. That's the biggest inn in this whole city." A beautiful girl appeared at the inn. "Welcome to our inn." The innkeeper Lena praised Turan the moment she saw him. "My, you're quite a handsome guest." He smiled with a sense of relief. "How much for one night, Miss Lena?" With a cheerful expression, she quoted the price as she welcomed him. 16 dupit. As soon as he heard, he replied, "I'll take it." Turan held out a small money pouch toward her. "More importantly, there's something I'd really like to ask you." Lena gently received him. "What is it you'd like to ask?" Without beating around the bush, Turan asked his question directly. "Are there any monsters around here with a bounty on them?" "No." Lena paused for a moment after hearing his question. "Monsters." His eyes were firm and his expression serious as he waited for an answer. "I need to start killing monsters and find a way to absorb as much mana from them as possible." And he also said that hunting monsters would earn me money too. Turan couldn't wait any longer and asked naively, "Why aren't you answering me?" Lena burst out laughing as she tilted her head to one side. "My dear guest," she said, raising her left hand, "nothing in this world is completely free, you know. Model." In the corner of the inn are those sealed barrels from the city hall. Turan, who was now sitting at the table and holding a glass of water, asked, "What is that?" Lena looked at him a little surprised. "You don't know about the city hall. You really are a country bumpkin." Turan sat there in silence, listening intently as she explained that the city hall is where they handle a lot of government business and the officials who work there are all personally hired by the lord of this city. Lena looked at him with both eyes. It's probably closed by now. The sun has completely set. If you want to look for monster hunting bounties, you should go to the city hall yourself tomorrow, okay? Lena stood opposite him with one hand on her hip. So you're a monster hunter too? Turan sat properly at the table and asked with a straight face, What's a monster hunter? A brawny body like yours is said to be able to withstand tremendous energy. There's a rumor that if an ordinary person manages to hunt a monster, they'll definitely become a mage. You're also eager to become a mage, aren't you? Lena was still focused on her conversation with him. Of course. Anyone who believes in that kind of superstition is the biggest fool in the world. Suddenly, a hand landed on his shoulder from behind. Superstition, you say? Another man with blonde hair had appeared behind him. The fact that someone can become a mage by killing monsters is true. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. And his identity is Meeson, the monster hunter. Seeing him, Lena took notice and asked, Meeson, you're still alive. Meeson looked completely unfazed. I've told you before, I won't die until I become the first mage. Turan raised a hand signaling to him. Meeson pulled his hand back and burst out laughing. Oh, how rude of me. Turan took this opportunity to seriously ask for more important information. Could I hear more about what you just said? Meeson looked directly at him and answered, about the fact that you can become a great mage by killing monsters. Lena sat down at the table, resting her chin on her hand, listening to their conversation. Mages become stronger when they hunt monsters. By that same principle, if an ordinary person kills a monster, they can become a mage themselves. Meeson glanced at the 4 other men behind him. The 4 of us are hunting monsters to become mages. One of them crossed his arms confidently. That's right, exactly. Turan looked at them, both surprised and serious. Well, if that's the case, does that mean one of you has already become a mage? They immediately answered, no way, in this city. There's only the Lord's mage and the 3 people under him. That's it. Meeson laughed casually as he spoke. But didn't you say you've hunted monsters before? For that kind of work gear like yours is, well, it's a bit much. Don't you even have a weapon? Turan placed an object before them. I do. As soon as Meeson saw it, he recognized it. Is that a slingshot? Just look at how worn it is. It's easy to tell you've used it many, many times. Turan seemed very serious during the tense conversation. That's right. It's actually perfect for shooting something about the size of an egg really fast. Meeson rubbed his chin, staring intently at the slingshot. With a weapon like that, you could probably hunt monsters like rabbits or foxes with ease. Turan's eyes widened slightly as he looked at him. To be honest, we were just saying that we need another long-range shooter. Are you interested? You want to hunt with our group? At that, Turan gave a curt reply to end the conversation. No. But anyway, that night as he lay on his bed, he thought, there's really no good reason for me to go hunting with them. His face looked gaunt and incredibly tired. What a chaotic day this has been. The backpack I brought with me sits neatly beside the bed. I still can't really believe I've actually left that village for good. Turan raises his palm, playing with a bit of magic. What's going to happen now? His ears suddenly twitch, catching a sound. Turan reflexively sits bolt upright, looking towards the door. Someone... He remembers the conversation on the road. That barren road with Keon, even in an inn like this? I can't let my guard down, can I? He walked beside him, hand in his pocket, and affirmed, That's right. Keon looked over at him with a gentle expression and a faint smile. A city doesn't automatically guarantee your safety, you know. Hearing that, he also replied, I understand. He continued to warn Turan carefully, In that case, don't you ever lower your guard. And so he obeyed without question. Understood. Turan approaches the door, one hand already channeling magic. The door to the room creaks open just a little, allowing him to see. His expression doesn't change. Lena appears right at the door with a smile. Lena. She speaks softly. Are you asleep yet? Then she adds a little about her purpose. I noticed this room is quite cold, so I wanted to warm it up for you. Hearing this, Turan is a little surprised. What? Lena puts on a flirtatious expression as she looks at him, her hand fidgeting with the bow on her chest. She says, What are you trying to imply? She's still standing, bashfully hesitating right in front of the room. I mean it literally, of course. Turan stands with his feet apart, still not understanding. Literally how? Lena begins her advance, walking closer to him. For a small fee, I'll do anything you want. Turan, still clear-headed, refuses firmly. What if there's nothing I want? She deliberately presses her seductive body close, teasing him. Don't lie. I can tell just by looking at your face. Unexpectedly, Turan shuts his eyes tightly. his face as serene as the Buddha's. Lena is so surprised she's speechless, just staring wide-eyed. Keon's incredibly stern and angry face appears in his mind. "You must not." Turan stands still, looking at the man's expression, completely baffled. "Always be careful with the waitresses at inns and with prostitutes because most of them carry venereal diseases." His face is very serious as he listens to the man's instructions. "We may have good resistance to diseases, so we're fine. But if you slip up, you could pass the disease to another woman you're with. Don't let your lust lead you into doing something you'll regret later." Lena's face is now red with anger. She stomps down the stairs in a huff. "The city isn't easy, is it? From the incident at the fruit stall to Lena." Turan goes back to lying on his side on the bed. "You have to pay for even the smallest bit of information or a little story. This city really is a cold place." His eyes dart toward a sound. "Sir, I have a question." One of Misan's underlings walking behind him speaks up. "Why did you want to invite that guy to come with us?"
"Honestly, he doesn't look very useful."
Turan musters a faint smile, but his expression looks incredibly sad. "Yeah, you're right." And his tone, it's so defiant, like a prey animal facing a predator. But suddenly his eyes widen upon hearing Misan's voice. Looking at him reminds me of my younger days, seeing him go, hunting with a weapon like that. I'm honestly worried. Misan walks on, smiling kindly. With me around, he might just live a little longer. Beast Hunter Misan. The underlings can only accept it. The boss is just too kind-hearted. Hearing that, a satisfied smile spreads across Turan's lips. "Yeah." Turan clasps his hands behind his head and stares at the ceiling. "Maybe this city isn't as cold as I thought, huh?" The scene changes to the next day as sunlight shines down on the town hall. A man at the reception desk is flipping through a file. "Hello, how can I help you?" Turan politely and carefully approaches and asks, "Sir, are you a public official here?" The receptionist answers immediately, "What do I look like to you?" Without beating around the bush, he gets straight to the point. "I've come to hunt beasts." The receptionist tilts his head a little surprised. Beasts, Keon and his gentle words, once again appear in his mind. Life won't be kind to you. Back then he had asked why. The man was sitting on a rock, stroking the wool of some sheep. Because conversely, there's no reason for it to be kind to you. If you want others to treat you well, it's simple. The man at the reception desk hands Turan a piece of paper. As soon as he takes it, he is warned, "Don't take that outside, you hear? Return it when you're done." Turan looks at the ugly drawing of a black crow on the paper. "Is this the monster?" The man replies curtly, "What, you think it's a cat?" The man at the reception desk continues to flip through other documents in his hand. "It's unlikely, but if you do kill the monster, bring it into the city. Because if a mage doesn't retrieve the magic from it, it'll turn into an undead." He continues to warn him carefully. "If you kill a monster and leave the body according to city law, you'll be severely punished. At worst, it's the death penalty." Turan listens intently while examining the paper. "I know." The image of fierce, deformed monsters flashes in his mind. "I know what happens if a monster turns into an undead. I can't make the same mistake again." Turan intentionally asked, "So don't the knights hunt monsters?" The man didn't even bother looking up from his writing. "You think they have that much free time?" He slid a paper with information about the crow across the desk. "A knight's role is to maintain security within the city." Turan wanted to confirm. "So I have to hunt monsters outside the city." After getting his answer, Turan turned to leave. "That's a job for thugs like you." When the receptionist looked up from his pen, he realized, he's gone. Guess there'll be another corpse outside the city soon. With one eye milky white, its pupil gone amidst its jet-black feathers, a crow lay dying from a deep wound in its chest. The people at the hall stared at the sight, their faces pale. "No way!" The receptionist and two other men stared intently at the crow. "You brought it back this fast." Turan stood silently nearby as the man asked, "Did you catch it? Alone?" "Yes." He showed no particular expression, simply replying calmly. Turan then got straight to the point. "Where do I collect the reward money?" A rather plump man rushed over to the desk. "Of course we have to pay him." They placed a small pouch of coins in his hand. "Here you are. That must have been a lot of work. Go on home and get some rest." He took it and simply replied, "Thank you." After he left, the three of them gathered around the crow again. They discussed among themselves, "This is incredible. Its wings are still perfectly intact. To bring a crow back in this condition, Is that even possible? The receptionist's gaze shifted as if he'd noticed something. He saw that Turan was still there. "Oh, you haven't left?" Turan asked nonchalantly. "Are there any other monsters worth hunting?" The man broke out in a cold sweat, shocked. "What?" He was standing there completely unharmed and relaxed. "Don't tell me you can still keep hunting." A feast of delicious dishes was spread out on the table. "This is the most expensive meal on our menu, sir." Lena sighed after setting down the mountain of food. "I can't believe you hunted 30 monsters in just 3 days." To Turan, however, it seemed perfectly normal. It was nothing. Turan calmly enjoyed his meal. "You must have made a lot of money, right?" Turan opened his eyes and stated seriously, "It's not just about the money. Each time he defeated one of those small monsters, he absorbed its mana. To be precise, his main goal was the mana from the monsters. Because of that, he'd definitely grown much stronger." Turan stared intently into the palm of his hand. His mana was several times greater than when he'd met Kion. His gaze was fixed unblinking, but he could feel he was getting close to his limit. "Relying on the mana of weak monsters, it'll probably be hard to get any stronger." Turan suddenly spoke up. "Hey!" Startled Lena immediately replied, "Yes, sir." With a completely straight face, he asked, "No one stole a bite of this, did they?" Lena, standing right beside him, was sure he'd eaten every last bite himself. She tilted her head, impressed. "You're so thin, but you have a huge appetite." The inn's cook wiped the sweat from his brow with a towel. "It's been a long time since I got to prepare a meal like this. I'm so glad you enjoyed it." Turan stood up from his chair, nodding in appreciation. The food was really delicious. The man happily promised, "Next time I'll make it even better." Suddenly a hand shot out and grabbed his hood. A menacing thug appeared from behind him. "Enjoying a nice meal all by yourself, are we?" Turan initially remained silent, not bothering to look back. "Hey, String Bean, making good money these days, huh?" Before the guy could even finish saying, "How about sharing a little with your buddies?" he took a fist straight to the face. He staggered back, stumbling from the blow. "You!" Another thug on his side saw this and cursed, "You son of a bitch!" Turan tilted his head slightly. "You wanted me to share a little—" The enraged thug swung wildly at him. "Don't get cocky." Turan didn't move from his spot, easily blocking the punch with his elbow. As the thug stumbled, another one charged from behind, brandishing a chair. With just one hand, he knocked the chair aside. The thug's eyes widened as he saw Turan's hand poised to flick his forehead. The flick sent the man flying backward. Lena, watching from the side, was gritting her teeth. "Stop!" she screamed, squeezing her eyes shut. "Don't fight in my inn." Migyang appeared, bowing deeply. "I humbly and sincerely apologize." Turan stood completely still, taken aback by his deep bow. "I've already punished those two. From now on, I will make absolutely sure this never happens again." Still bowing, he explained, "We've been having a tough time lately, that's why we did what we did. I guess we were just jealous seeing you do so well." After that, Mizan even motioned for him to hurry up and apologize. Both of them, now scared, bowed their heads and obeyed. "Sorry." Turan looked at him seriously and asked, "Are you guys really struggling?" Mizan avoided his gaze, looking away. "Money's a bit tight, yeah." He started to explain their situation, but his fist remained clenched and motionless at his side. "In about 3 days, we won't have enough to pay for our room. But that's our problem." Turan held out a bag of money right in front of him. "Take this." Mizan looked up, surprised and confused. "What's this for?" Turan explained calmly. "This is a thank you for your good intentions the other day. You were worried and asked me to go with you." Mizan was the one who was truly surprised to hear those words. "This guy, how did you know?" Turan cut him off, his face serious. "It's not for free." Turan wanted something in exchange. "Share some information with me." Mizan laughed and pointed a thumb at his own chest confidently. "Information, I'm confident about that. I'll tell you everything I know." And with that, the city returned to its peaceful state. At first, Turan was standing alone on a high place. This would probably be the last hunt in this city. As he looked around, he thought to himself, "Mizan gave me information on the next city. It's almost time to hit the road." Inside that inn, the two of them sat opposite each other, talking for a long time. There was more useful information than I'd expected, and no matter how many times I look back, Misan really was a good person. In his memory, Misan was a radiant man. He wasn't guarded like Kion, but in his place was someone purer and kinder. But then suddenly his eyes shot open in shock. Because of something, His sharp sense of smell had picked up a strange scent. This smell, it's coming from... Just like that, Turan leaped suddenly and swiftly deep into the forest, hoping his gut feeling was wrong. His pale hand pressed against a tree trunk as he came to a stop in a clearing. In the deserted woods before his eyes was a murdered body slumped against a tree. This person was definitely... He immediately recognized the man, trembling with blood all over him. Isn't that Mizan's companion? The corners of his mouth curled into a smirk when he saw him. The man's eyes had turned a dull gray. Next to his motionless hand were a few small coins. Turan crouched down closer to him. He began to wonder, what on earth happened here, Mizan? He could only fall silent as he glanced over and saw another person slumped against a nearby tree. The person over there looked to be on their last breath, but their mouth was still whispering, "Rabbit." Two long incisors appeared in the darkness. Rabbit. Turan looked over and saw a monster. A rabbit was gnawing on a corpse. It had white fur and a mouth sticky with fresh blood. Turan watched it carefully, then slowly stood up. Its two eyes were bloodshot. It leaped forward and bit a chunk out of a tree trunk. Turan gritted his teeth, surprised by its speed. That was fast. The rabbit monster's two ears stood up sharply. I almost got hit. Turan took out the slingshot in his hand and spun it continuously. His eyes widened, concentrating fully. He whipped the slingshot in a powerful arc, sending several small stones flying toward the rabbit at incredible speed. It was extremely agile and managed to dodge them all. Watching its movements, Turan grew serious and cautious. This thing is used to defending against projectiles. One of its feet armed with 3 sharp claws tensed up. With astonishing speed, it launched itself toward where he was standing. Its bloodshot pupils were fixed on a single target. It was as if he vanished into thin air. There was nothing left at that spot. The rabbit monster landed after missing its target, Turan. Seizing the opportunity from behind, he brandished a small, sharp knife he had ready. A single stab straight into the base of its neck made it scream in pain. Turan quickly retreated backward. His body backed away toward a tree trunk, but he seemed to be gradually fading away. The rabbit monster turned around and attacked the tree. Its expression was ferocious, clawing continuously. Its eyes glowed fiercely red as it leaped and slashed at everything in its path. Suddenly, white smoke rose from within the forest. The rabbit monster stood in a field of fallen trees, roaring at the sky as blood trickled down its body to the ground. Its 2 ears drooped, and its tongue lolled out. His black boots reappeared on the ground. Turan returned to find the rabbit monster's corpse lying limp on the ground. As was his custom, he held his palm out toward it. His face was cold and emotionless as he absorbed all the mana from the rabbit monster's body. A blue light flared from within his eyes. The amount of mana I'm absorbing is completely different. Way more than that first leopard monster. His eyes softened, returning to normal. No way. The person leaning against a tree trunk whispered weakly, "Are you a mage?" Turan didn't hide it, answering right away, "Yeah, that's right." The person was still curious. "But why would you reveal your identity?" Turan didn't hide anything, and answered right away, "Yeah, that's right." The person was still curious why he would reveal his identity. And Mizan, too, was lying in a pool of blood, his 2 eyes lifeless. "Mister! Hey, mister!" A memory flashed. Turan could still remember Mizan's smiling face. Nearby, there's a big city called Orem. They have a place there called a library. At the time, Turan was quite surprised. "A library," he had confirmed. "I heard that place has thousands of books." Mizan had spoken as if he'd read his mind. "The mention of books gets you all excited, doesn't it?" "I'm being serious. Was it that obvious?" Mizan picked up the cup on the table, smiling gently. "But I hear that not just anyone can get into that library." Taking the chance, Turan asked right away, "Then what do I have to do to get in?" Mizan didn't hesitate to tell him. "It seems only mages are allowed inside." Hearing that, Turan rubbed his chin deep in thought. "I see. In that forest. But his mind was still on their conversation. "I've made my decision." "What did you decide?" Now Turan is standing before 3 handmade graves. "I will go to the great city of Orem that you mentioned." His face looked a bit sad, his eyes glistening. After that, he could only leave with one last word. "I hope you find happiness there." Scene changed to Turan. Standing silently in a long line, his face a little grimy from having just arrived at the new city, reminded of when he saw the small city of Murray. And to think I was so amazed back then. It's embarrassing to think about now. This place is so much more grand and bustling. The great city of Orem. He followed the crowd, stepping through the city gates little by little. He stepped into the great city. I didn't expect so many people to be trying to get in. His gaze fell on a few soldiers guarding the gate. Are they screening for wanted criminals? Turan slowly moved closer. As expected of a great city, the system is much more organized. Suddenly a voice cut in. His thoughts were broken. Confused, Turan turned around blankly. Is there a problem? It was that gate guard. With an arrogant expression, he pointed right at Turan's face. You can't enter. As Turan listened, he touched his own clothes. I've never in my life seen someone with such filthy clothes. You should go over there and dust yourself off first before you come in. Inside, the city was a towering skyscraper with many kinds of trees growing around it. The small figure of Turan stood at its base. He looked up, unable to hide his surprise. This must be the library Misan told me about. He couldn't help but marvel in his thoughts. It's so magnificent. I bet it was built with magic. Turan cautiously approached the gate and started to ask, Excuse me. The guard at the library gate replied sternly, Yes. Turan stepped closer and made his request. I'd like to come inside. Kenya stated the condition firmly. This library is only for mages. Turan immediately declared, I am a mage. The soldier, not believing him, stepped forward to investigate. What? He narrowed his eyes and then berated him. You dare impersonate a mage? Are you looking to die? It takes all kinds of crazies, I swear. Kenya intentionally raised his hand as if to shove Turan away. The idea of someone like you being a mage is absurd. But before his hand could even touch Turan, it suddenly began to glow bright red. Kion. A memory of him resurfaced once again. Mages can recognize one another. They can sense their opponent's magical power and tell if that person is stronger than them. His gaze suddenly sharpened just from sensing the palm of that man's hand. His eyes blazed bloodshot. The guard was immediately affected, struggling to shut one eye. He was thrown backward by the pressure. Are you all right? I'm fine. Kenya's head was still on the ground. His eyes flew wide open in shock. This is no ordinary mage. This person is at least a noble, if not higher. Then he got to his feet, let out a long yawn, and said, My name is Kenya, Knight of the House of Bantus. May I ask which family you hail from, my lord? Turan, not wanting to answer, calmly asked, Do I have to state my family to be allowed inside? He immediately replied with respect, No, my lord. Kenya bowed his head low, his eyes darkening. However, to use the library, you will need the permission of the Lord of Bantus. Turan still didn't quite understand. You mean... Kenya immediately proceeded with his task. I will contact the House of Bantus at once. Meanwhile, Turan was bathing. All right, then. He opened one eye, looking completely exasperated. I thought this would be simpler. A maid with golden hair also appeared. His long arm was being carefully wiped down. Turan sat in the bath being washed by the maids. How in the world did it come to this? He suddenly turned and ordered them stop. They all jumped in surprise. Yes, my lord. Turan wanted some privacy, so he deliberately tried to get them to leave. Is there a problem with me bathing alone? The maids answered timidly. If we do not serve your lordship properly, we will be punished. In this vast city, he had no choice but to accept. Do as you wish. And so they obeyed. Thank you, my lord. A maid with cool brown hair was marveling at something. How wonderful! A voice suddenly spoke, startling her so much she quickly covered her mouth. What's wrong? Turan was carefully arranging his hair at the back while wearing his new suit. Is there something on my face? The maid with the cool brown hair quickly explained, I believe I was just overwhelmed by your lordship's beauty. The other maids next to her bowed their heads as well. Please forgive us, my lord. But Turan had a kind and gentle demeanor. There's nothing to apologize for. They immediately spoke up in unison. Please, my lord, you mustn't be so humble with us. His gaze was suddenly drawn to a sound from another direction. What was that? A person with pink hair was entering the room. Azella appeared with a sharp gaze and a devious look on her face. This was the same guest who had arrived disguised as a beggar. She smirked provocatively. After a bath and a change of clothes, you look just like a prince, don't you? Turan took notice of her words. Calling me a beggar is a bit provocative. He introduced himself. I am Turan. and in return she did the same. I am Azella. She wanted to know more about his identity. What family are you from? Turan carefully and politely refused. I have my reasons for not being able to disclose that. Azella gently stroked her chin.
Is that so? What a shame.
Then a mysterious smile suddenly blossomed on her face. So this man wants to hide his identity, does he? Well then, let's try prodding him a little and see what happens. Just like that, she unleashed a surge of magical power that radiated from her body. Her face lit up with excitement as she faced Turan. Come on, show me what your magic is like. Turan's eyes widened as an invisible pressure bore down on him from all sides so heavy that he immediately realized this was no joke but a genuine challenge. His eyes instantly flashed a brilliant blue as his own mana erupted, spreading throughout the space to counter hers. The air grew thick and heavy, almost suffocating. Azella's bodyguard immediately rushed forward to shield the maids behind him, while the two immense powers collided violently, causing the entire room to tremble as if it were about to shatter. Turan let out a long breath. The pressure vanished the moment Azella lowered her hand. Her hand was trembling noticeably. Oh my... Outwardly, she maintained her composure, but her gaze was deep as she looked at him and spoke these words. You there, guest. Would you like to marry me? Time seemed to stop. Turan could only stand there, frozen, his eyes wide and his mind completely blank. Azella suddenly burst out laughing. What's with that reaction? I was just joking. She leaned in with a mischievous smile and continued, But you should still give it some serious thought. The seat next to mine is currently empty, you know. With that, she turned and left, leaving behind a sudden strange silence. Turan remained standing in the same spot, his gaze shifting down to his own hand. Only now did he realize that his hand was also trembling. He thought to himself, she's at least on my level. Is this level of power considered normal around here? This great city had suddenly become much more dangerous in his eyes. A while later in the city lord's office, the man was seated on a high chair. Observed him calmly before speaking. Welcome, young nobleman. You must already know my name, correct? I am Jack Bento, the Lord of Orem. Turan replied concisely, I am Turan. The Lord blinked, his tone shifting slightly. Turan? How straightforward. You want to enter the library, don't you? Many people come here because of the strange rumors. So let me tell you this. Up front, inside there is no ancient forbidden magic. No secret arts to increase your mana, no hidden treasures, and certainly no shortcuts. Turan replied without a hint of hesitation, I have no need for those things, so you have no need to worry. A moment of silence passed, and the Lord nodded. If you still wish to enter, I won't stop you. Besides, there's nothing in there related to my family's secrets. He glanced outside and then said, It's already late now. Rest for today and come back tomorrow, all right? Turan replied politely, I will not forget your kindness. The next day, at the tower that rose straight up as if to pierce the sky, guards respectfully moved to either side and announced, Access pass confirmed. It is our honor to welcome you to the Horizon Library. The giant doors opened, flooding the entrance with light, and for the first time since setting foot in Orem, Turan's composure shattered. His eyes widened in astonishment at a sight that far surpassed his imagination. Inside, the space defied reality with spiral staircases ascending endlessly. They were so high they nearly vanished into the clouds. Turan stood speechless for a long moment, thinking, This isn't a building. It's a monument to knowledge. Suddenly, a sweet voice rang out. It's a pleasure to meet you, Turan. He looked down to see a small girl smiling brightly at him. I'm the librarian here. By order of the Lord, I will explain the rules to you. The rules are actually quite simple. Turan stared, surprised. A child is the librarian. But the little girl continued confidently. Rule number 1, if you damage a book, you must pay for it. Second, you are not allowed to take any books outside of the library. And while you are using the library, I will be watching you at all times. Turan hesitated before saying, all right. But could you perhaps stand a little farther away while I'm reading? The little girl just smiled brightly without answering. He carefully asked another question. If you're the librarian here, then you must have read all the books in this place, right? The little girl nodded enthusiastically. That's right. Finding what you need is my specialty. What kind of book are you looking for, romance history? Or since you're young, maybe you want to read something a little more stimulating. We have some adult books over there. Turan looked at her intently, then replied immediately, I just want to learn more about the fundamentals of this world. The little girl placed a stack of books on the table.
Many of the books here are hundreds of years old.
They might not be exactly what you're looking for, but this section should be able to help you a bit. Thanks a lot, kid. It's nothing. Turan carefully picked up the book, his fingers brushing across the cover as he thought to himself, "This is the first time I've held knowledge instead of a weapon. There's no battlefield, no blood, just paper and ink. How extraordinary." The following days passed like a dream. Turan built a daily routine for himself: wake up, go to the Horizon Library, and read until the sun went down. The following days passed like a dream. Turan built a daily routine for himself: wake up, go to the Horizon Library, and read until the sun went down. From geography, the different races, mage rituals, methods for creating ancient monsters, to the ruins of the old empire. Piece by piece, the empty void of knowledge around him began to take shape. With every page, the world became clearer, sharper, and more real. One day the Lord summoned him and offered his praise. "I hear you've been making good use of the library," Turan replied curtly. "Yes." The Lord's voice grew heavier. "You do understand that allowing you to use the library and treating you as a nobleman is a great favor, don't you?" "Now it's time I received repayment for that favor." Turan replied immediately, "Please just say the word." The Lord told him about a monster in the north that was attacking merchants. The 4 knights sent to deal with it had all been devoured, and currently the clan can only mobilize 2 people of noble rank. If you joined them to make a group of 3, it would be much safer. Turan maintained a calm exterior. Protecting others is what a mage should do, he thought. I agree. But a doubt surfaced in his mind. Mages don't usually get involved in these kinds of things. The Lord emphasized the northern road is a vital trade route. It's been blocked for 10 days now, so we must clear it as soon as possible. Hearing this, Turan suddenly realized, 10 days ago, that was before I even set foot here. So that's the reason he let me into the library so easily. On the journey north, Azella walked between Turan and Marvin with a formation of knights behind them. She clicked her tongue and sighed. My father certainly has his ways. Mobilizing even a guest to go hunt monsters with us. She glanced sideways, half joking. Or is it because he doesn't trust us that much? Turan thought to himself, knowledge is never free. It's just wrapped up in a prettier package. Azella turned to look at him. Oh, I wasn't implying anything about you, guest. I'm just saying my father is being a bit extra, that's all. Marvin chuckled. Calling the Lord extra is a bit much, don't you think, sis? Azella rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. Don't you dare defend him. Marvin stepped in front of Turan and gave a slight bow. This is our first official meeting, isn't it? I am Marvin Van Tass. I look forward to working with you. Turan replied curtly. Likewise. As the group continued toward the spot where the magical beast appeared, Azella listlessly kicked obstacles out of her way. I just want to get this over with quickly so I can go home and rest. Marvin slowly walked closer to him and asked, Hey, Turan, do you have any feelings for my sister? Turan was startled by the question. Huh, absolutely not. Nothing of the sort. Marvin smiled knowingly. Well, that's a relief. Up ahead, a knight shouted, Halt! And pointed to a carriage destroyed by the monster. The group quickly moved in to inspect the area. Is it that monster? Looks like it. We already forbade travel to the north, so the victims must have been attacked while coming down from the north. Turan thoughtfully observed everything with care. A handprint on the wooden structure gave him a clue. The monster we're looking for is most likely a monkey. Azella was surprised. A monkey? Yes, look at the handprint here. It seems it attacked the merchant caravan and then returned to the forest. I think if we follow the remaining tracks, we can pursue it. Azella frowned. Tracking? I'm not very knowledgeable about that type of magic. What about you, Marvin? I'm not great at it either. Is there anyone among the knights who can... Turan stepped forward and interrupted. Let me give it a try. Azella smiled teasingly. Oh, do you belong to a clan with that ability? It's just that I've used it so much that I've grown accustomed to it. He sniffed the discarded cloth, carefully activating his tracking ability. Turan's eyes widened as a trail of blue energy appeared, stretching into the forest. Let's go this way. They followed it to a lake. Turan remarked, The trail has been broken in this area. It must have used something. Azella asked in amazement. A beast actually knows how to hide its tracks to avoid being followed. No, it's probably just acting on instinct. Suddenly, the scent grew unusually strong. He turned back and yelled. Behind them, a giant gorilla burst out from the bushes. It roared menacingly before lunging to attack. However, contrary to what the knights expected, it didn't engage in close combat. Instead, it scooped up a handful of nearby rubble and hurled it at them. The knights' faces paled in panic. "Oh no!" "Watch out!" The powerful barrage of stones easily wiped out the knights in front. Turan leaped aside, dodging everything, but when he glanced at Azella and Marvin, he froze, because both of them were using the knights as human shields. Azella tossed a soldier aside like a broken shield, and an old thought flashed through Turan's mind. "So Mother wasn't wrong after all?" Azella shouted. "All of you attack!" The knights still standing rushed forward, but the gorilla turned and fled. Instead of fighting, it ran. Azella and Marvin chased right after it, but their speed clearly couldn't match. "Hurry! Don't let it get away!" Suddenly from behind them, a single stone sliced through the air, whistling towards the monster. It flew through the crowd with pinpoint accuracy, just like a bullet from a sniper rifle. It pierced straight through the gorilla's chest with ease, taking the beast down without breaking a sweat. The two of them turned to look back at him, their faces a mixture of astonishment and shock. There, amidst the dust and smoke, stood Turan, finishing the swing of his simple leaf with absolute focus. He tilted his head with a faint smile as if it had been nothing at all. The gorilla collapsed, taking pained, gasping breaths. Azella immediately moved in to deliver the finishing blow. "Watch this." A serpent of fire coiled around her arm. It lunged at the gorilla, engulfing it in a ferocious blaze. The entire area erupted as a massive pillar of fire shot toward the sky. From a distance, Turan quietly observed the terrifying heat and recognized it. That was the bloodline power of House Vantus, the protector of fire. As the dust gradually settled, the knights let out a sigh of relief. Azella stood tall, a proud and excited smile on her face. "When that giant rock came flying, my heart nearly leaped out of my chest." Marvin immediately smirked, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Oh, getting goosebumps from a little scare, were we, my dear, haughty sister?" Azella spun around, pointing right in her younger brother's face. "Shut your mouth! You're the one who screamed like a little girl." Marvin stammered, I was just surprised, that's all." While the others recovered and bandaged their wounds, Turan stood silently at a distance, observing the chaotic scene. Blood stained the ground and the groans of the injured, and the scorched smell of fire magic still lingered in the air. Thankfully, no one died, he thought, but this situation is not good at all. Even though it was a surprise attack from a magical beast, this was a battle where serious casualties should have been avoidable. With their bodies enhanced by mana, both Azella and Marvin possessed strength and speed far superior to the ordinary knights. And yet in the most critical moment they didn't hesitate to use those weaker than themselves as shields. Their actions were cold and completely at odds with the noble image of aristocracy he had envisioned. An unsettling feeling crept into Turan's chest, but he just shook his head slightly when Marvin noticed his gaze and asked, "Is something wrong?" Turan answered curtly, "It's nothing." Azella clapped her hands together, the sharp sound cutting through the air. Her voice was suddenly brimming with excitement. "All right, stop moping. The most important thing right now is to absorb the mana from this monster's corpse." The three of them approached the enormous, smoldering corpse and held out their hands in unison. Streams of pale blue light began to radiate from the beast's body, carrying with them a current of pure energy that flowed back into their bodies. Turan could clearly feel the warm waves of mana flooding his meridians, just as he'd read in books, even with several people absorbing it once the growth efficiency wasn't diminished. The theory was correct. After just a few minutes, Azella groaned in frustration and pulled her hand back. "Damn it, I've hit my limit again. This damned growth limit." Marvin sighed and shook his head as well. "I'm at capacity too." Azella clicked her tongue, looking over at Turan with a mix of admiration and envy. "Now I see why Father was so insistent that he come with us. His magic skills are impressive. He has as much mana capacity as I do, and he still hasn't hit his growth limit. What a monster." On the long journey back, Marvin suddenly spoke up, his voice sincere. "Thinking back on it, if you hadn't been here today, we would have definitely failed miserably. From tracking it down and realizing it had washed itself to hide its scent to that critical stone throw that unbalanced it, that was all you." Turan shook his head humbly. "It was just luck. It was nothing special. If anything, I regret being a step too slow. I didn't anticipate that the monster could seek and detect enemies from so far away." Marvin's eyes widened. "A seeking ability." "Yes," Turan explained slowly. "From what I've read, some monsters awaken special abilities based on their most prominent physical traits. This one had unusually large hands and misshapenly large eyes. It was certainly because of these traits that it could throw stones with such incredible force, and observe its targets from a great distance in the dense forest. Marvin stared at Turan, jaw agape, as if looking at a different kind of monster. "You figured all that out in a split second." Turan shrugged nonchalantly. "I just read about it in the library's monster encyclopedia." Marvin immediately grimaced. "The library, that stuffy place for bookworms, nobody goes there. I got curious and went in once a long time ago. But all the books were way too complicated. I left before I even got halfway through one." Turan smiled lightly. "Next time, you two should just ask the librarian. She'll find you an easier book." Azella blinked, looking baffled. "The librarian? There's actually someone like that in that god-forsaken library." The scene shifts to Turan stepping into the Horizon Library after returning from a hunt when a clear, cheerful voice suddenly rings out, "Welcome back, Turan." He immediately freezes. A faint smile plays on his lips. What a huge mistake. In this city, not a single knight or commoner would dare call a nobleman by his name alone. They always use titles like, "My lord, honored guest," or "sir." More importantly, the petite girl standing in front of him looked nothing like an ordinary librarian. Turan asked bluntly, his voice colder than he intended. "How do you know my name?" The girl blinked in surprise. "Oh, that—" She hopped onto a table and giggled. "Are you just now figuring it out?" "I knew it. From your library permit, of course. Where else within the bounds of this library?" "My eyes can reach every single corner. Your name was right there on that little slip of paper." Turan was silent for a moment before asking, "And what should I call you?" She shrugged, her voice full of mischief. "I don't have a real name. You can call me whatever you want." How about sweetheart? That sounds pretty cute, doesn't it?" She even fluttered her eyelashes and cupped her cheeks, feigning shyness. "Well," Turan cut her off immediately. "That's enough. I'll just call you Little Librarian." She pouted, feigning a sulk. "So cold." "After using me to fetch your books for the past few days, you suddenly decide to act all formal now that you know who I am." Turan retorted, "I wasn't using you, and besides, don't stand so close." "It makes me uncomfortable." Turan tilted his head, curious. "Little Librarian, are you a mage from the old empire?" She shook her head, her smile growing mysterious. "Not at all. I'm not even human. I'm something closer to a spirit." She then began to explain, her voice as gentle as if she were telling a fairy tale. "When a spirit possesses a living thing, it becomes a living soul. But when it inhabits something that is neither living nor dead, it is simply a spirit. This library is my body. This human form is just a convenient vessel for communication. It's a reflection based on the preferences of whoever is looking at me." She winked playfully. "And your preferences say quite a lot about you, you know." Turan immediately cut her off. "Don't be ridiculous." She just giggled. "I'm like a reflection on the water's surface. You can see me clearly, but you can never touch me." To confirm this, Turan reached out to her. His hand passed straight through her body as if it were smoke. The girl looked at him with an odd expression. "Hey, don't do that. It feels weird." Turan quickly withdrew his hand. "Sorry." She grumbled, crossing her arms. "What I hate most is that I can't physically deal with intruders. If I could, I'd have beaten them black and blue ages ago. They dare to take books and never return them." Turan suddenly realized something important. "Not even the head of House Van Tass knows you exist, does he? Maybe no one in this library ever has." "That would be correct." She nodded as if she had read his mind. "Because until now, no one has ever been qualified enough to perceive my existence. My creator reached the absolute limit. Only those whose form has reached a certain level of perfection can see me. And as far as I know, you're the only one." She tilted her head, teasing. "A bit romantic, isn't it?" Turan asked at once, "What exactly is this form you mentioned?" "Mages usually call it a bloodline." He took a deep breath and asked, "Can you tell me about my bloodline?" "That's something you'd be better off asking your parents, don't you think?" Turan answered quietly, his voice dropping. "Unfortunately, I'm an orphan." She paused for a moment, then smiled. "In that case, let me just check it directly, shall I? If you'll allow me to see your body." Turan froze, his mind going blank for an instant. "See my body?" But before he could even react, her small hand had already passed straight through his chest. He yelped in shock. "Ah!" She beamed. "There we go. You and I are connected now." Don't say such weird things. It didn't hurt, did it? After a few moments of probing, she withdrew her hand and reported, "The majority of your bloodline is comprised of two key components, pursuit and predation, the signature traits of House Jaha. Am I right?" Turan nodded. She continued, "But there's another bloodline mixed in there. You're the product of parents from two different bloodlines. So what's the other one?" She shook her head with a hint of regret. "It's been sealed." It's not that unusual to be born with a sealed bloodline when two different ones merge. As you grow stronger, the seal will eventually break on its own and reveal itself. Turan nodded silently, though the mystery still lingered in his mind. He then found himself thinking of his mother. She had always been too refined, too educated to have been a mere commoner. Perhaps she came from a noble family of some kind, but the bloodline must have been diluted to the point where it could no longer sustain mana. He shook his head to clear it, then turned and thanked her. She smiled mischievously, her eyes twinkling. "If you're really that grateful, then you can stay for another month." From the day he learned the librarian's true identity, everything changed. Instead of reading quietly by himself, Turan constantly peppered her with questions, demanding deeper explanations for every single detail. To his amazement, she not only had a perfect grasp of every book currently on the shelves, but she also remembered the exact contents of volumes that had been stolen or lost for thousands of years. She was a living archive of ancient knowledge. Under her guidance, he began to see the world through a completely new lens. Countless invisible substances surround us all, and they can be observed by suspending water to form a lens. Illnesses aren't curses, but are caused by organisms so small they're invisible to the naked eye. Decomposition happens because they gradually consume living matter. Light is refracted. Heat is generated from friction. A wounded body heals itself, all following clear natural laws that are far beyond the conventional magic theories that mages are taught. Turan immediately decided to test it. He placed a plump red apple on the table and, concentrating, applied his knowledge of decomposition. With just a light touch, the apple instantly blackened from the inside, rotting rapidly, as if time had been fast-forwarded 100-fold. The librarian tilted her head and asked, "How did that feel?" Turan couldn't hide his amazement. "This is incredible. It's not that current magic can't do something similar, but by understanding the principle, I achieved the exact same result while consuming far less mana. Just a single shift in how I perceive the world has elevated his skills as a mage to a whole new level." But immediately after, a chilling thought crept into his mind. The great clans are probably monopolizing this knowledge on purpose. If every mage understood the fundamental principles, the advantage of the elite would vanish. No wonder the overall skill level of the world is in decline. The librarian spoke softly, her voice lowered. "I'm starting to understand why." Finally, Turan announced, "It's time for me to go." The young librarian's eyes widened in surprise. "Really?" he explained. "It seems the master of this place has already started to politely show me the door." Suddenly she panicked, rushing toward him and shouting, "Don't leave me behind!" But her body passed right through him and she tumbled onto the floor. Turan calmly asked, "Can you leave the library?" She sat slumped on the floor, head bowed. "No." "Then stay here forever. Cook, tell stories, whatever you want." Turan shook his head. "I can't." She pouted, knowing full well he wouldn't stay. Before he walked out the door, she offered some advice. "This land is full of the ruins of gods. Ancient legacies are scattered everywhere. If you search, you might meet spirits who know even more than I do." Turan turned back and smiled. "I promise I'll come back to visit you sometimes." She shrugged, feigning indifference. "Whatever you want." But her glistening eyes clearly showed she was just trying to hide her feelings. Turan smiled reassuringly. "Besides, there are still countless books here that I haven't finished reading yet." Leaving the city of Orem, Turan walked alone on the long, deserted road. From a continental map he'd found in the library, he knew that the Jaha family's territory lay to the east, in the midst of a vast and harsh desert that would be his next destination. If he went there, perhaps Turan would find clues about his parents. The sun began to set, painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange mixed with deep red. After walking for a while, Turan stopped in a quiet corner. He sat down, breathing steadily, telling himself, "There's no need to rush. If those clues were already gone, they would have been gone 18 years ago. If they still exist, they won't disappear just because I'm a little late." The next day, Turan set out again. On the road heading east, he came across bodies scattered along the path. Dried blood stained the ground, and the faint smell of death hung in the air. Despite the gruesome scene, Turan didn't let it distract him. Suddenly a neigh echoed from up ahead. He immediately ducked behind a dense bush, observing carefully. Before him lay a man motionless on the ground, his wounds quite severe. Beside him stood a magnificent fiery red horse protectively standing guard over its master. Suddenly the horse shot forward with terrifying speed, attacking two figures standing opposite. Turan narrowed his eyes, thinking, it has a saddle, so it wasn't a monster attack. Is that horse protecting its master? Turan's gaze sharpened as he assessed the situation. An attack from that direction. The two attackers came into clear view. They were dark elves. One of them growled a curse. Damn it, how is a beast this strong? The other one chuckled softly in response. Just find an opening and break through. You think it's that easy? Observing more closely, Turan immediately recognized their true nature. Both began to focus their power. A strange dark energy radiated forward. Suddenly, the bodies lying scattered around began to twitch and contort grotesquely before rising to their feet. They had been resurrected as hideous monsters obeying their master's command. Seeing the horrific sight, Turan recalled a passage from a book. This is the Dark Elves' necromancy that I read about in the library. He hesitated for a moment. Should I intervene? For all I know, that man could have attacked the Dark Elves first. But conflicting thoughts churned in Turan's mind. He continued to watch, his eyes fixed on the battle. He carefully considered his next move. One dark elf bent down over a corpse and casually began to bite it, asking in a whining voice, "Whose arm is this?" "Give me one." The other one didn't even bother to look up. "Eat your own portion. You must have gotten one too, right?" Turan's eyes narrowed as he thought, so they're cannibals. Without another moment's hesitation, Turan instantly activated his concealment ability. His entire presence vanished from all senses. At the same time, the second dark elf continued to grumble with disgust. "The guys I killed were all men, their meat is so tough," and suddenly an invisible attack struck with terrifying force. The dark elf was completely torn apart before he could even react. The other one was frozen in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. No attacker, no warning. There was only instant death. But he quickly regained his composure, roaring, "All of you gather around me now!" The entire horde of the undead rushed forward, forming a protective circle around him. Another invisible attack rushed forward. This time a monster leaped out to block it, its sturdy horn deflecting the blow. Turan's stone. The elf gritted his teeth, roaring in fury. "Which bastard is hiding over there? Show yourself! Now!" He ordered the bull-like monster to charge forward and smash through everything. But then he realized, is this guy using a stealth skill? His face darkened. He summoned another new monster, sneering, "Let's see how long you can stay hidden now." His face darkened. He summoned another new monster, sneering, "Let's see how long you can stay hidden now." As it touched Turan's cloak of concealment, it began to flicker, and his form slowly reappeared. The dark elf immediately locked his gaze on Turan, a vicious, triumphant smile spreading across his face. "Found you." "You bastard!" he ordered immediately. "All of you attack! Kill him for me!" The monsters rushed towards Turan from all directions. He immediately focused a fierce flame gathering in the palm of his hand. It grew brighter and hotter. He launched it forward, engulfing two monsters in the intense blaze. But from straight ahead, a giant bull monster. It seemed completely unfazed and continued to charge like an armored tank. Turan leaped to the side, dodging it by a hair's breadth, nearly getting crushed. He gritted his teeth. "I have to hurry. Good thing I already killed one of them." But when he glanced back, Turan realized the situation was worse than he'd expected. The fox had sunk its teeth into his leg, causing blood to gush out. He kicked it away with all his might, creating a brief opening. But before he could catch his breath, the mad bull charged again at a terrifying speed before Turan could fully react. The horrifying impact sent him flying backward, slamming into a large tree trunk. Turan's whole body ached from severe internal injuries, causing him to cough up blood. He was in no condition to even stand. Seeing this, the dark elf laughed savagely. "You got what you deserved? How dare you kill my kind? You'll be on your knees begging for death." Just then, the red horse suddenly charged back. It kicked the dark elf hard in the face, sending him tumbling to the ground. Caught off guard and humiliated, he screamed in a panic, "Quick, save me! Hurry!" Immediately, all the monsters stopped their attack on Turan and rushed back to protect their master. The dark elf roared in fury. How dare you humiliate me like this? I'll kill all of you! But before he could act, another sharp attack descended. A fatal blow pierced through his head, finishing him completely in a single breath. When the dark elf died, all of his summoned monsters collapsed instantly, vanishing into nothingness. The battlefield suddenly fell eerily silent. Turan struggled to his feet, his body battered and bleeding nonstop. He panted from exhaustion, thinking to himself,
Looks like I'm really going to die.
Turan's body crumpled, his legs too weak to support him anymore. The horse slowly approached. Turan weakly raised a hand, gently stroking its muzzle and whispering,
That's right. Thank you.
The scene shifts to late at night. A quiet atmosphere settled over them. Turan sat by a small fire across from the man who had just woken up. At first, the man was startled and a little scared. Huh? Where is this? Turan spoke calmly. You're finally awake. The blonde-haired young man looked at Turan, bewildered. Who are you? I saw you were being attacked by a dark elf, so I stepped in to help. Hearing this, the man turned to his horse and gently stroked it. Turan observed the horse and remarked, It's really intelligent, you know. It even knew to protect its master and bring him to a safer place. The young man nodded, his voice filled with gratitude. I sincerely thank you for saving my life. I am Aziz of the Burke clan, Turan replied, and I am Turan. After a moment of silence, Turan looked at Aziz and asked, Was there a reason you were fighting with the dark elves? Aziz lowered his head and answered slowly, A reason? There was none. I was on a pilgrimage with my retinue when we were suddenly attacked for no reason. I've heard that other races are violent, but I never imagined it would be to this extent. His voice began to tremble and his pent-up sorrow burst forth as tears streamed down his cheeks. I'm sorry. The people I lost today were very precious to me. Turan asked gently, Were they your relatives? Aziz shook his head. They were the knights and attendants who accompanied me on this journey, but they were the ones who raised me since I was a child. Turan quietly observed him, thinking to himself, He's a kind person. This pain is real. It can't be faked. After a moment, Turan asked, How many dark elves attacked you? I think there were only 2 of them, Aziz replied. You said you killed 2, right? Turan nodded slightly. In his mind, he activated his sensory exploration ability, scanning the entire surrounding area. After a few seconds, Turan confirmed, That's right, and there really aren't any others around here. After a moment of silence, Aziz looked at Turan and asked politely, Turan, are you on an urgent matter right now? I'm also on a pilgrimage just like you. Aziz looked at Turan in surprise for a moment, then asked, Even though you're so strong, you're still on a pilgrimage. Could it be? You're the son of some great clan, but why are you traveling alone? Turan answered vaguely. It's a bit difficult to explain in detail. And honestly, I'm not that strong. He continued in a calm voice. I only managed to kill one of them thanks to an ambush and a surprise attack. The other one nearly killed me. If it weren't for your red horse, I wouldn't have won. As soon as he finished speaking, a strange phenomenon occurred. A faint blue energy radiated from Turan's body, spreading outward. At the same time, a brilliant red aura erupted from Aziz. The 2 streams of energy collided gently in the space between them, creating an invisible pressure. Aziz observed Turan more closely and thought to himself, He really isn't that strong, is he? If he hadn't absorbed the Dark Elf's mana earlier, he's probably even weaker now. He's no match for those 2 dark mages. Then how did he manage to survive? Could it have been his incredible combat instincts or a special bloodline? But even so, why would someone like him be traveling alone? Breaking the silence, Aziz spoke, his voice calmer now. If you don't have a specific destination, I would like to invite you to the Bantus clan. He paused for a moment, then continued with sincerity, I will repay you for saving my life and for escorting me safely home. Turan looked at him and asked curtly, Repay me? Aziz explained with a warm smile. Our clan, the Bantus, are vassals to the great Arabian family in the north. Our lineage is one of artisans who specialize in the craft, the art of enchanting. We have forged magical artifacts for generations. His eyes held a quiet pride. We will craft a perfect artifact, one that is best suited for you. Turan sat still, listening to every word, silently weighing the offer that had been laid before